Let's go to town. Let's go to town. Uh, there's Brett Hill.
Hey mate, how are
Good,
you?
good day. Sorry for being late, man.
That's okay, buddy. It's early here. It's not
Oh,
late.
that's right. It's early the next day. How's the
Well,
rest of my day gonna go?
yeah, the future's great.
The future. Yeah. Australia represents the future more than any other place.
Oh, that's a bit of a worry right now.
Yeah, wow. So we're gonna talk about resilience, a hot topic right now in the
Yeah,
world.
very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so. So, yeah, it's been
Thanks for the great rundown. The description piece here,
yeah, easy.
and I think we should just get right into it. But I have so many questions. Curiously, how you integrate this into your practice of adjusting people and all that. So,
Yeah, perfect.
what is the PA on your hat?
Oh, that's my footy team, Port Adelaide.
Oh,
So
Port Adelaide. Wow.
we are top of the ladder at the moment, heading one round to go before finals. So it's getting exciting.
What kind of division is this, or what kind of league?
So this is the AFL, so the Australian rules football. So this is the National League.
Wow. So you're playing at a high level, man.
No, I don't play. No, I
Oh,
just
that's your
watch.
team. Yeah, Port Adelaide.
That's,
Okay.
yeah, that's my team. That's
Yeah.
my team. I'm
Okay.
officially too old to play. I think I'm now officially older than every single player that's out there. So my AFL dream is over.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's probably a good thing. Otherwise, you'd be spending a lot of time on the table in the office instead of, taking care of people, huh?
Yeah. It
Yeah.
is kind of a devastating moment when the last one retires. That's still older than you.
There it goes. Vanished. Yeah.
That's it. Done.
Yeah. Okay, man. Let's roll. I'm so excited to connect here. It's Dr. Brett Hill coming to us all the way from down under, proudly sporting the colors of his favorite footy team. What is it, Port Adelaide?
Port Adelaide. Yes,
Yeah.
having a good year.
And this is Australian rules football for those listeners unfamiliar. And it's a pretty cool sport down there. So they're allowing to play during the COVID and everything, huh?
Yeah, it's been an interesting season. They've been some of the teams have been in hubs up in Queensland, so they've had to leave Victoria, which is in the most severe lockdowns down here, and so it's been a unusual year, but it's still going ahead, and my team's doing well. So hopefully, be able to travel up for a grand final in a couple of weeks' time would be the ideal.
Well, I can tell already, man, the Aussie culture, I think it just emanates positive attitude and excitement. And even we're in a really tough time here. I'm looking forward to talking to you about ways that we can make the most of this, the challenges of modern life today in 2020, and particularly the topic of resilience, which has become your expertise, having lived through a challenge and now also caring for people as a chiropractor. So I guess I should just tee you up, and you can kind of flow into your story and what the importance of this topic is to you.
Yeah, well, it's a great introduction because you're sort of talking about the ability to use what's going on right now, and I think that's kind of the direction that resilience is really heading in. We used to think of resilience as something you do in a crisis, and something you do to survive a crisis. And I think our thoughts on that are starting to change, which I think is really exciting. And we're now sort of seeing these crises as an opportunity not just to survive but to grow. And so our sort of thoughts around resilience, I think, have changed a little bit from just surviving a crisis to actually thriving through a crisis. And so, obviously, this is a bit of a hot topic right now because, there's a lot of people feeling in various degrees of crisis right now as a result of everything that's going on around the world and all of the challenges that have ensued from that. And at the same time, I think there's a really big opportunity for people to learn from that and grow from that and to sort of take lessons forward from that for the rest of their lives. And so resilience has always been something I've been particularly interested in. I'm probably a bit like you, a bit of a self-help junkie, where I just love learning and reading. And I guess as a chiropractor, the idea that our bodies are more resilient than we've been led to believe has always been a firmly held belief of chiropractors, that if we can give our bodies a chance, if we can just remove whatever interferences are there, and give our bodies what it needs, then they are actually incredibly resilient, and they can deal with far more than we've been led to believe. So I think that fundamental belief came through from my chiropractic background, and then became even more, I guess, important to me and significant to me as I was dealing with personal stress and challenges with with divorce and separation and various challenges that ensued from that as well. So that kind of led me to delve even deeper into it. And then I think as I shared my story around that and the journey I went through around that, it made me realize that it was an important message to share, and that many people were struggling with similar things, and that I guess for me, having a bit of a unique perspective with my chiropractic background, and also all of the personal development I'd done, and all of the, I guess, wellness experts that I'd managed to surround myself with over the last decade, that I was in a bit of a unique position to share a maybe slightly different perspective on it that might be able to help other people. And that's been kind of a really fun, interesting journey over the last couple of years, which has been really cool.
So did your self-improvement quest emanate from this period of life that you describe as bottoming out and having a separation and family crisis and personal struggle? Or I'm curious, because I think sometimes we do our studying, we intellectually are exposed to all these great concepts, and then meanwhile there's some train wreck elements of our lives that we're not really paying attention to. And I'm not trying to pin you with a hard question, because I reference the same thing myself, where I wasn't coming to terms with certain weaknesses and frailties and flaws in my personal life, because maybe 4 out of 7 things were going great, and that's what
Yep.
the public sees on social media or whatever. You got money in your bank account, but your personal life is struggling, or vice versa, and it's tough to nail 7 out of 7. But I'm curious how that went for you.
Yeah, well, I think definitely a bit of both. I mean, I'd always been interested in that personal development stuff already, and I think that's an important message for people, is that resilience isn't just important when the crisis comes. The resilience is something you can use and utilize in everyday life. So if you're wanting to study, then resilience is going to be useful. If you're wanting career development, then resilience is going to be useful. If you wanted to get fit, then resilience is going to be useful. If you want to make lifestyle change, if you want to socialize more, if you want to have better relationships, all of these things encompass, by their very nature, challenges, and having the resilience to be able to thrive through those challenges is going to put you in really good stead. So a lot of it was stuff that fortunately I had sort of worked on and learnt and studied prior to that sort of that pivotal moment, and then and as you said, at the same time, that there were things that I hadn't, I guess, recognized that I needed to work on even more. And when something like that happens, it does cause you to really reassess your entire life, and sometimes quite brutally. For me, at times my quest for personal development and knowledge, and everything I knew and all the tools that I had in my head were in some ways in the early stages of that a curse rather than a benefit, because I just delved really deep into wanting to find kind of everything I'd done wrong and all of these solutions and everything needed to be changed and fixed, and all of those sort of things. And I talk about this often in my book and my resilience mentoring that I do, is that what needs to come first is some degree of sort of self-love and self-care. And in that point in time, I was very low on both of those things. And as a result, I just beat myself up really badly. And so, it's in some ways, all those tools were a blessing, and in some ways they were a curse, because I was able to delve in very deeply, and make a lot of change. But it meant that it was pretty painful at the time.
Yeah, I think this self-critic and this holding yourself to a high standard often can lead to great success, I'm thinking especially in the field of sport where it's such a dramatically and graphically competitive arena, and these great athletes that we revere and learn about from their biographies. I just watched the Michael Jordan series, and he was so tough on
Good,
his
wasn't it?
teammates, and he wanted to win all the time, and he was driven and obsessed with winning. And yeah, he won a lot of titles, but I think for the broad perspective here, a lot of us, when we're pushing and driving and trying to succeed, a lot of times we get there, but the journey has been, abused and disrespected, and we're still not happy even when we hit these milestone finish lines. And so I think that's the trick here, is kind of to make these things work to your advantage and put them in the proper perspective. Health and fitness and diet, and transforming your diet. A lot of people experience too much stress because they're so careful about their diet, and they're so desperate to achieve the body composition goals, and the whole thing turns into be a stressor and a net negative, even if they do happen to reveal the six-pack at the end of their 12 weeks of suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this is a massive part of resilience, where we talk about, a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. And there was a fabulous book called Mindset by a lady by the name of Carol Dweck, her name was, who wrote just a fantastic book talking about this. And the idea is that, yeah, that fixed mindset is very black and white thinking. It's like you either succeed or you don't. You're either good or you're bad. You're smart or you're dumb. And that's the mindset I think that a lot of people have. And it's also, I think, a mindset that a lot of people get pushed towards in times of crisis. So you see it so much in the world right now where, in times of crisis, it's like we either go one way or we go the other. It's so black and white, so diametrically opposed in our thinking. But I think what we need to be able to maintain is that shades of gray, the concept that there is good and bad in everything, and that, each of those different options I take have opportunities to learn and to grow and have benefits and drawbacks, and that's totally okay. And I think when we can start to see that world in shades of gray as opposed to that black and white thinking, it does, as you said, it gives us so much more flexibility to be able to make choices and to change our course of action if that's what we want to do, but also to deal with roadblocks and stumbles and challenges when they come along, is that we then have the opportunity to learn and grow from them, and not beat ourselves up so badly, and see the opportunities that are there in the crises, rather than it just having to be either a good thing or a bad thing.
I guess that's the same for characterizing the pandemic and the quarantine. You can either write this year off as the worst year and it sucks and it's a bummer, or look for opportunities. I've talked about some people I know are getting extremely fit during the lockdown, and then other people are complaining that their gym is closed, and so they've gained weight and gotten out of shape. And it's like, where's that fork in the road that we can identify and
Yeah.
do something about it?
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? I mean, I'm a bit the same. Like, I think, my best mate and I, we've been best mates for probably 20 odd years. And we've never worked out together until Corona started. My gym closed, his gym closed. Luckily, I had to sort of set up my home gym before it all happened. And so he sort of contacted me, he said, can I come up to your place and work out? And I've always kind of liked the idea of working out early in the morning, but I've never been much of an early morning person. So I've never done it. And he said, well, I've got work. And so the only time I can do it is, 6 o'clock in the morning. And I was like, all right, well, let's just do it. And so now, 3 times a week, I'm getting up at 6 a.m. with my best mate, and we're doing our CrossFit workouts together and just loving it. And we both, the gyms are back open here now in Adelaide. And we both said, well, actually, we don't want to go back to the gym anymore. We're actually really enjoying this. This is great. And, we get to catch you. We both got young families, and we don't catch up as much as we used to. And now we just get to connect on a regular basis. And it's been a real benefit. But yeah, I think what you're saying before, I've been really interested to sort of look at what's going on right now and kind of compare it to, I guess, what's happened in the past. And one of the things that's really interested me is looking at how the elderly people I know have dealt with this crisis. And the interesting thing about that is kind of looking at particularly for that sort of Great Depression era, that very, very resilient era of people who went through that Great Depression, and as a result learnt to be so strong and so resourceful and so positive and solution focused in a time of crisis, that the ones that I know, even though they are the ones who probably should be the most worried about coronavirus, they are the population that is most likely to die as a result of coronavirus. They're the most at risk as a result of coronavirus, yet they seem to be the least troubled by it. They're the ones who are sort of saying, well, we've seen it before. We've seen worse before and lived through it. And, I've had a good life and I'm happy. Yeah, I have to change things a little bit, but I've changed everything my whole life before. And they're just very resilient about it. They seem to have just a wonderful attitude around it. And they're just, taking it as it comes and taking it in their stride. Whereas seemingly, younger people who are much less at risk and should be far less worried are having far more challenge with the changes that are going on. And so, I think that, that lesson that they learned in the Great Depression has stood them in good stead, I think, probably for the rest of their lives. And so that gives you a bit of a glimpse into, I think, the opportunity we've got right now for this to be a lesson that we learn that stands us in good stead for the rest of our lives.
Well, in your example, take us back to that time when you describe how you were gripped by fear, anxiousness, and hopelessness, and you turned that into resilience. I mean, what are the steps you took, or how did that look for you? You referenced in your bio that it was 2013 was kind of your low point, and
Yeah.
that wasn't that long ago. So it's been a wild ride since then.
It's so funny for you to say that, because for me it seems like a long time ago. It seems like another world away. But yeah, 2013. So I was happily married. I had a wife. I had 2 kids. I had, as you said, the career was going well. I was working as a chiropractor. I had my own practice. Literally had the house and the white picket fence, and thought, this is all going well. I remember going out, I was playing indoor cricket, which you guys might not know much about cricket, but I was playing indoor cricket with my mates, and we'd won the grand final. So I was on a high. I was like, world's going great, and I got home, and I can remember my wife was sitting on the end of the bed, and I walked in and she said, "We need to talk." I remember thinking, "Oh, that's not good."
Put your trophy down,
Yeah.
put the champagne down. Oh,
Yeah.
mercy, man.
Yeah. And so that was it. That was the first conversation. Within 3 days, I'd been asked to move out of the house. Within 3 weeks, I'd found my own house, and had to deal with, for me, up until that point, my whole purpose had been around family. Like everything I'd done, work-wise, career-wise, home-wise, was all about wanting to create a great environment. I'd always, from a really young age, I'd wanted to be married and have kids. I just wanted to have that sort of nuclear family. And so, I just felt like the rug had been pulled out from under me. My whole purpose for everything I was doing, whether that was the podcasting I was doing, the books I was writing, my chiropractic practice, all of it, I just kind of lost my purpose and drive for doing all of those things. And then, as I said, went into this kind of, very male mindset of, okay, well, here's a problem. I just need to fix it, and the harder I work, then the better I'll fix it, kind of thing. And so, just analyzing, I can remember I picked up a book, which was called, I think it was called The Dark Side of the Light Chasers. And it was a fascinating book, and I think probably a great book, but it wasn't the right time for me to read that book, and it caused me to delve into this whole, I guess the idea behind the light chasers was kind of, people pleasers and people who, I guess, kind of what you're saying before, who retain that positivity of like, well, most things are going pretty well, and everything's good, and I'm happy, and focus so much on the positive of, thinking everything had to be positive all the time, that we just didn't acknowledge that darker side, that there is always a good and bad, and I am sometimes good and I am sometimes bad, and life is sometimes good and bad, and I guess that quest for the positive side of the equation had caused me to ignore, other things going on as well. And so that kind of led me into a bit of a, like I said, a dark place of really, overanalyzing it, and my work dived as a result, because I just didn't know why I was there. I just didn't have a purpose for being there, and it took me some time to sort of relearn that. And so, the first step for me really was about that self-love and that self-care. It was, I realized that there was no way I could start, quote unquote, fixing anything. And we can't fix anything, but trying to get back on track. There was no way I could do that effectively and healthily without actually starting to focus on myself a bit more, and show some love and care towards myself, because otherwise, like I said, I was just beating myself up and going to a really dark place. So that was definitely the first step for me, was really understanding that I needed to love myself a bit more. And then the next step was really reconnecting with my why, refinding that purpose. And that was a big light bulb moment for me. Sometimes you just have that one moment where, it's like the blindingly obvious just kind of slaps you in the face, and like literally the concept that I could still be a good dad, even though I'd been divorced. And as ridiculous as that sounds, I know to so many people out there, and to so many, people who are, divorce is one of those funny things where you hear the stats and you think, well, those sound quite high, but you never ever think that could happen to me. Well, at least that was my experience anyway. And so I'd never even considered the concept that I could end up being one of those statistics, So to suddenly be in that position, it just turned my whole world upside down. But literally, yeah, I can remember like this, all of a sudden this light bulb went, oh, I can still be a good dad even though I've been divorced. Like I can actually just focus on what I can control and do the absolute best I can when I've got my kids. And, I went through a 3-year, I guess, process of being able to retain custody of my kids, and managed to eventually get to the point where I had sort of 50-50 care with them, which is, in many ways about as good as it gets for a dad. You can get to that, you've done pretty well. And that was one of the challenges, is that, it various times it does feel like the system, for want of a better word, makes it really hard for dads to acknowledge their contribution to their kids' lives and raising kids, and to get to that level of kind of 50-50 care, which took some time. So, but that realization was massive for me, realizing that I could still have that purpose of wanting to create a wonderful environment for my kids to grow up in. And it's also acknowledging that I could do that when I wasn't with my kids, that actually everything I was doing was sort of working towards creating a better world, and that my kids, especially now that they're only with me 50% of the time, were going to be brought up by that world, and that the people they surrounded themselves with and the society they surrounded themselves with was going to have a big impact on, where they ended up later on. So that rediscovery of purpose, as well as, I think for me, a big part of it was adding a little bit of selfishness to that purpose as well. And realizing that, I had been people pleasing a lot, and giving so much of myself to everybody else, and not acknowledging that for me, having fun, it was just a really important part of my life that I'd been kind of not acknowledging and not investing time in. And so I sort of expanded my purpose to say, well, it's not just about the family, it's about me too. And that was a really important part. So, there's a number of steps I can keep going through, but those were, I think, the first ones, was really loving myself again and rediscovering my purpose.
Wow, that's a great story. I can relate on so many levels. Having gone through divorce myself, 2016, and the statistics and your friends and people around you. Of course, it touches everyone. It's so common, and it's really not that big of a deal until it happens to you, and then it's kind of a bigger deal. And so I've always been a really supportive guy for my friends and couples on both sides, and maintaining friendships, and acting like life goes on. And then when you're faced with it yourself, that key transformation of your mindset, I think, is really important. That this is what you're faced with now, and you're gonna make the best of it. But also that part about positivity, which I really connect with also, where that quest to be eternally positive and to always put a positive spin on things allowed me to sort of go to those dark places in life where things became troubling, but I refuse to acknowledge it. It might be finances, it might be relationship, it might be who knows what it is, where you can talk yourself out and make a rationalization that, yeah, I'm still quite fit, even though I haven't been to the gym in 3 months, because I used to be a professional athlete racing against the bloody Aussies who was so fast. But I remember a comment from Deepak Chopra, the great New Age author, and he said that eternal positivity is itself a source of stress. And that one hit me like a brick, because that is, I'm the guy with the smile on my face. And boy, it really is a coping mechanism that's probably quite inferior to, let's say, applying skills like resilience to face things head on in a direct manner, acknowledge that, hey, man, your life's in the shithole right now in these 7 different areas. And, let's see what we can do about it and move from there. So I like that first step of self-love, because that implies that, you don't have to always be positive all the time. It's okay that you're struggling right now. And you might even be able to share that story with your mates who usually only talk about Port Adelaide and the footy record.
Yeah. Well, my mates don't like Port Adelaide. They go for the opposing team, so we banter about that. We don't get together on that one. But no, I think what you're saying is absolutely right. And your reaction is really, every time I've sort of started to share this story, has been such a common reaction. Like, oh, I can totally relate to that. Which is in the end, I guess, what made me realize that telling my story was so important. And I've now gone on to sort of write a book about it and have a whole mentoring program built around this resilience, because I just got that reaction. I can remember talking on stage in 2016 at our wellness summit we run for our podcast network. And we had about 600 people there. And honestly, I spoke about this journey, and it felt like at the end of that talk, like 595 people came up and said, oh my God, I can so relate, and the second part of it was, it's so good to hear it from a guy, because guys don't talk about this stuff. And it just made me go, oh my God, like this is something that I need to talk about, So it was, and you mentioned Deepak Chopra, one of the people who was really fundamental to me in my journey, and I was fortunate enough to interview her twice on my podcast show, was Byron Katie. I don't know if you've come across Byron Katie's the work, and she talks about loving what is, and that's just such a great phrase, I think, that absolutely encapsulates what we're talking about. Is just loving what is. There's good and bad, and we can love both. That I'm sometimes good and bad, and I can still love myself. It's just, this is what it is, and you can love it anyway, and you can love the process, and you can love the challenge, and you can love the learning, and you can love actually all aspects of that. That is actually a choice you can make. From a very young age, well, my favorite quote has always been, I choose to believe that the universe is conspiring to help me, and it's one of those quotes that's variably attributed to about 1 billion different people, and anonymous, and, all of those people. And so I don't actually know where it comes from, but I love it. And the thing I love about it the most is, I think you don't necessarily, it sounds like a bit of a spiritual quote, but you don't necessarily have to be spiritual to get it, and so I'm by nature probably more pragmatic than spiritual. Like I can kind of go into both worlds, but I'm much more of a pragmatic person than a spiritual person. And so my way of thinking about that quote is probably different. Some people think about that and they think of the universe, or they think of God, or they think of, whatever that is that they, whatever their higher beliefs are. Whereas I look at it much more pragmatically and say, well, you've kind of got two choices, right? You either choose to believe that the universe is conspiring to help you, or you choose to believe that the universe is not conspiring to help you. And the fact of the matter is that one of them helps you retain in a growth mindset. One of them helps you see opportunities more easily and more clearly. One of them helps you move forward and thrive through challenges. And one of them tends to make you feel like the world is out to get you, And so regardless of whether it's true or not, I choose to believe it, because my life is better when I do, and that's my way of thinking about that quote. And I really feel like it's stood me in really good stead through all of these challenges in many ways.
So what's the name of your book?
My book is called Rock Bottom. It's available on pre-order right now. Although actually the ebook is available right now on my website. So if you want to go to drbretthill.com, you can get it there. And it's all about thriving through personal and professional challenges. So it's very exciting. It's just coming out. I will definitely, once I get my hands on all of the hard copies, I'll definitely send one over for you.
Oh, that's great. And so are you talking us through these steps in the book where you talk about starting with self-love and then connecting to your why? I'd love to maybe try to drift through these on the show and give people a nice perspective and compel them to grab that book. Rock Bottom. Is there a subtitle that's a little more hopeful than Rock Bottom? I mean, give me the whole scoop here, man.
Well, Rock Bottom came from a quote from J.K. Rowling, actually, author of Harry Potter. And her quote was, I believe it was, rock bottom was the solid foundation on which I rebuilt my life.
Wow. Love it.
And it was just the perfect quote. Sometimes it's just the perfect quote for the perfect time. And I just remember reading that and going, Oh my God, yes. Okay. Like it was just one of those mindset shifts where you just kind of think, like you see it as an opportunity. Like literally it goes from, oh my God, my life has ended. This is the worst thing ever, to actually, this is an opportunity to start again from fresh and build it however I want. So it was just the perfect quote for the book. And yeah, I was just like, no, that is it. So when I did that talk in 2016, I called my talk Rock Bottom for that reason. And then, yeah, as I said, the reaction to that talk, I think there was probably about 30 people who came up to me and said, "You need to write a book." And I was like, oh, I think I need to write a book. I'm a bit slow like that, but they all came and told me, and I was like, all right, I've I'd written books before, and I think at the end of every book I get to, I go, that's it, I'm done, I'm never writing a book again. And then invariably, I've already started writing another one, and something comes along that makes me think, okay, that's something I need to share and something I need to write about. So yeah, so that's where Rock Bottom came from. It was just that perfect quote that made so much sense. So yeah, it kind of, I guess it can sound like a negative, but when you hear the whole quote, you realize that it's very optimistic and very hopeful.
So we want to connect with our purpose. If we got
Yep.
a little lost and a little off track, you describe how, hey, you're still allowed to be a great dad and a great family person,
Yep.
even in your new status. And then
Yep.
where do we go from there?
Well, I think the next step from there is really curiosity. Yeah, and in many ways, curiosity was part of it that came very naturally to me. I was always very naturally curious. I'm sure you're the same. Ending up sort of doing what we do in terms of health and wellness and podcasts and all those things. You just have that curious nature that you just want to know why. Why? I'm sure I was that annoying kid who always asked that question. But curiosity to sort of look into what's going on and why it's going on, and what are different perspectives on this, what are different options that I could take moving forwards. And so it's really about that ability to very honestly analyze where you're at, and what is actually going on. And that can be as I said, for some of us who are eternal optimists, that can be acknowledging the downsides as well, and acknowledging those dark sides that I mentioned before. And for some people who are eternal pessimists, then that can be acknowledging the positive side as well, and sort of getting really curious about those shades of gray. And so the curiosity, I think, does really speak to that growth mindset that we spoke about earlier. Understanding that not everything is black and white, that there are shades of gray in there, that if we just look a little bit more deeply, we can get a more nuanced understanding of A, what's going on, and B, what possibilities that means there are moving forwards. And that really does allow us to shift into that growth mindset, which allows us to see the benefits in the challenges and the challenges in the benefits, and to see the opportunities that exist to grow and to change and to move forward. And obviously this is where it becomes very nuanced. Everyone's life and challenges and growth opportunities are different, but in many ways the ways you come to those and the ways you sort of acknowledge and deal with those, particularly tying them back into that purpose we've just spoken about, the purpose becomes the compass. Then once you've got that self-love, and then you've developed that, you're reconnected with that purpose, then that really becomes the compass for your curiosity, where as you become curious and you see all the different options all of a sudden unfold in front of you, then the purpose is what allows you to see very clearly which one is right for you and which one
Mm,
is not.
mm,
When you've got that connection, and you maintain and foster that connection on a regular basis, in many ways it makes that, because sometimes that curiosity can be really daunting. It's like, whoa, hang on, there's all these options out here now. Like, in many ways, black and white can be easier. It's like I either do it or I don't. It's right or it's wrong. I either eat paleo, or I 100% of the time, or I never do it. And in some ways that's easier. In many ways that's why we go that place in times of stress. Is that if I'm either all in or all out, I don't have to think about it on a conscious basis. But the reality is, when you're really well connected with your why and your purpose, then it's almost just as easy. Like the answers are so obvious about which track you need to go down, because the question is, well, which one just takes me closer to my purpose? And that really can be your guiding light through that curiosity and that next sort of phase of your journey.
yeah, well said. I mean, right now, with all our access to information, and the onslaught of information that's constantly has the constant potential to distract us. We can live our whole lives just being curious about a million different things and not getting focused to do anything about it. We can become the dilettante at the corner coffee shop who can talk about Aussie rules football as well as the NBA, as well as the track circuit and the golf scene, but having never swung a club or shot a basket. And I see that potential today to just kind of be, I guess, a consumer of information and have a massive knowledge base, but it's just sort of you might as well be like a mobile device that you can type in a Google search, unless you're really pursuing this really clear purpose and making a difference and struggling through the ups and downs that require the application of resiliency, or that build resiliency. And boy, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to make a judgment about the younger generation, but their lives are quite a bit different than ours, where they've been shielded from failure and struggle. And that was part of
Definitely.
Carol Dweck's message and mindset in another work that she's put out. Same with Ashley Merriman and Poe Bronson, who have honored her work and written their own wonderful books like Top Dog and Nurture Shock, that we've created these little children in a bubble because we have all this potential now to orchestrate their lives. And so they come out with, straight A's and high achievement awards, but having never been through the ups and downs and the soul searching and all those things that you're describing in your own journey.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think in many ways, I think the fear of us as parents has sometimes done a disservice to our children. That we've been sort of stuck in that fear-based mindset, and as a result have wanted to shield our kids from our fears, and have denied them the opportunity to develop their resilience and develop their growth skills. And I do look at it in that way. Like, it is a development opportunity. It's a skill that they need to learn, and really, I feel like as parents, we should be doing the opposite. We should be giving them more opportunities to fail, more opportunities to stumble and to learn. And in many ways, as a parent, I see that almost as my role, to create safe opportunities for them to fail. And we do that. I do that with my kids in lots of different ways. But we do a CrossFit workout together every Sunday. And my kids love it, and they get in there in the gym, and they do hard stuff, and sometimes they collapse in a heap on the floor and go, "This is too hard. I can't do it. I don't want to do it," or and just little things like that. Are just such great opportunities for them to sort of thrive through adversity, and they're amazing. Like, kids are just the best tool for learning you'll ever get in your life. I think probably kids and relationships are probably equal in terms of learning tools, but kids are just watch them and follow them and see what they do, and get curious about them, and you'll just learn so much. So yeah, I definitely think that's a great way to retain curiosity. But I think you're absolutely right in terms of what you're saying about the world right now. I think with everything that's going on in the world right now, this curiosity and this quest for information, if that's not preceded by the other steps I mentioned, then you do have a tendency to get lost. And it's very easy to make a mountain out of a molehill, and you get one little bit of information. And if you've got this, and you're seeing it right now, there's black and white thinking. Like, people are either heading one way or they're heading the other way, and one way is down this route of just medical fear around the coronavirus and how bad it is and what's going to happen and what we need to do. And we need to, we're just going to have to live in a bubble for the rest of our lives, and that's just going to be the world from now on. And the other direction is an alternative health fear and a conspiracy theory fear, where these little bits of information just keep growing and growing and compounding, and all of a sudden it becomes this massive, global conspiracy, and there's all these different threads and tangents coming in. And I'm not saying that none of that is true, but what I am saying is we need to be careful of going that black and white route, and missing the nuance of what's going on, the balance of what's going on, because when we do that, we get totally distracted from what's important. And really, ultimately, I think what's important is what we do, is how we look after ourselves. We're seeing people getting so distracted with these conspiracy theories that they're forgetting to do the simple things really well. That actually the best thing you can do for yourself right now is like eat well and exercise and look after your mindset. That's the best thing you can do for yourself right now. And the fact that that's the best thing that you can do for yourself right now means that you then would show up as the best version of yourself for your family and have the best chance to influence your family. And then by influencing your family, that's what's going to give you the best chance to influence your community as a role model in that regard, And if influencing your community makes a change, then that's the best chance you've got of actually influencing the world, So it's like, it's so easy to get so distracted on either side of the equation. But if we can actually come back to doing the simple things really well, I think that's the most powerful thing we can do right now. But it's the thing we get most distracted from in times of crisis if we don't have those, core foundations of resilience.
Wow, I've never quite thought of it that way, as a massive, invasive distraction. All the fear mongering and what the news is peddling every day. And I don't think I don't identify myself as someone who's succumbed to that at a high level. But when you see what's going on around you, and you realize that getting caught up in this serves to kind of isolate you from taking that first step out the door to improve your exercise program or make a healthy dietary choice, it kind of makes a lot of sense. And I think you could kind of put that characterization on social media and all the distractibility
Massively.
that people are, pushing at us. They want to distract us from our real lives and give us, I guess, some short-term gratification in favor of, being on that path and honoring your true purpose and all that great stuff. So yeah, watch out, listeners. Stay focused on your tiny little world there, and then have it emanate like Dr. Brett describes into your community. That's great. I love it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think the next step on that, on that journey is really around managing expectations, and really losing your expectations, because if you go on that journey with an expectation of the outcome, particularly expectations around how the rest of the world is going to respond to your journey, then you really are setting yourself up for disappointment, and you really do lose that degree of curiosity and flexibility, because you're fixated on, once again, a particular outcome, and often a black and white outcome. It's like, I either succeed or I fail. I either repatch up my marriage or I don't. I either I'm either with my kids all the time or I'm a bad dad. That expectation of how things should be, is a massive one. Obviously, for me, as I went through the process of divorce, the expectation I'd had on myself, without even realizing I'd had it, really was that, well, yeah, I was going to be married for the rest of my life and, raise my two kids, and I was going to live in the same home, and I was going to, and there was so many expectations that were there around how things should be done, that when they were sort of taken away from me, that was just, mind blowing and devastating. And so I think, having a healthy dose of, losing those expectations, acknowledging that the world isn't black and white, that there is fluidity, that, I mean, the simple act of, whenever you're writing your goals, I always now, and I kind of always did before, but I didn't really get it, but I'd write my goals and I will say, or something better, and just that little tweak, that little change, just moves you into that growth mindset, of saying, well, yeah, that's what I'm moving towards, because it's totally okay to have something you're moving towards. But it's when you're fixed on exactly that expectation of exactly what it's going to be, that sometimes you can get yourself in trouble. And as you mentioned earlier, for some people that can be really beneficial. They are very strict goal setters, and they'll state, this is exactly what I want, and they'll strive towards it, and often they'll achieve it. But you just need to be careful that that's not dominating your entire life, that you're missing out on opportunities, you're losing other chances, you're losing balance in your life because you're so dogmatically headed towards that. You've got such an expectation that that's the only way that it can be, and that's the only way of success. I think you mentioned some people earlier, and then their sort of dogmatic search of success. I was reading a quote just yesterday from Steve Jobs towards the end of his life, just talking about how, dogmatically he'd been in pursuit of that career success, and how that had impacted on his health and his family and all of those other aspects. So, I think losing those expectations and remembering that there are lots of right answers, and there are lots of different paths you can go down in your life, and one isn't necessarily better than the other, is a really important next step.
Yeah, listen to Steve Jobs, folks. I mean, these are, these realizations that come out on the poor guy's deathbed. It's pretty heavy, and so
Yeah.
we definitely need to honor those examples. I remember opening up to a passage in Jack Welch's autobiography. He was the leader of General Electric and regarded as one of the great executives of American corporate culture. And he was talking about how they used to put in the extreme hours back in the day. And of course, if the boss was coming in on Saturday, then all the team was expected to come in on Saturday. And he says, yeah, there were some prices and consequences to pay for this type of approach. And then the next sentence, I'll never forget it the rest of my life. He said, for example, comma, my children, blah, blah, blah. They spent most of the time with their mom, da, da, da. So like, he neglected his relationship with his children, but not only that, he wrote in that sentence that his children were an example rather than his children being, the centerpiece of his being, and his highest calling in life is to be a father. And it was just like, for example, my golf game suffered. I went from a 6 handicap to a 12. For example, I didn't have a good relationship with my children. And it was such a heavy thing that here's this smiling face on the cover of the book that everyone reveres as a great leader, and not taking away anything from what he's accomplished. And I appreciate him being vulnerable and looking back on his journey and saying, yeah, I kind of possibly F that up too. Boy, we can, take that and run with it, and realize that, that what you described, losing expectations. I try to say that a lot too, with my message, especially coming from that athletic example, where it's really critical to release the attachment of your self-esteem to the outcome of what you're doing. Because if you don't, oh my gosh, you're a frail and vulnerable competitor who's, liable to get discouraged at the drop of a hat after one bad workout or one defeat. And really what we want in a champion is someone who's extremely resilient to whatever ups and downs, to the extent that every failure is just an opportunity for growth and improvement.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, Jordan spoke about that in his doco that you mentioned earlier, didn't he? About how many shots he missed. I think he said at one stage that he missed more game-winning shots than any other player, because he was the one that took them,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, absolutely. We see that in so many aspects of life. And once again, I'm not here to judge people's their expectations or their goals, because, for some people, their purpose in life is their career success. And that's what they love, and that's what they strive towards. And if that's your purpose, and that's the way, their family dynamic is such that he strove for career success, and his wife's purpose was just all around family and bringing up those kids. And, I'm not here to judge that. Like, if that's your purpose, then that's great. But just get curious and make sure it is. You don't want to get to the end of your life like Steve Jobs and say, gee whiz, I thought that was my purpose, but now I realize that actually I neglected other things that actually were really important to me.
Well, I like how all your insights or your steps flow together. So just to remind the listener, we started out talking about cultivating that self-love before you go on any journey of personal improvement or reflection, and then getting connected to your why, getting curious about that. Once you have that purpose in place, and that kind of informs your curiosity or focuses it. And I think hand in hand with that is being honest with yourself, right? So you can
definitely.
Wonder if you're deluded, that you think your purpose is to get the Ferrari, but really, it might be something to reflect deeper, and then letting go of those expectations, and going for it. You can certainly make a commitment to be super competitive and driven and focused, and want to do the very best, but without that expectations. I think that's the magic where a lot of people screw that up, including a lot of peak performance gurus who are just all about, talking about optimizing every inch of your life, but they forget to mention that, maybe it's okay to let go of your expectations.
Absolutely. And we've all done that, I reckon, where we've had a guru we've been following, and you try and be them, because you think, well, this person's got it all together. Like, if I could just be like them, then my life would be all together too. And you sort of, I think everyone goes through those phases in the early stages of their sort of personal growth journey. And in many ways, I think it is a useful shortcut, because you kind of you copy them, and you figure out what bits of that work for you and which bits don't, and it gives you a bit of a framework to start from. But you very quickly realize that you're just not them. My co-host on my podcast show that I did for many years, which was the Wellness Guys show, my co-host Lawrence was just a very organized guy. Like, his thing is just productivity, and he analyzes his life to the nth degree, and he plans his life and times his life to the nth degree, and that fits in so well with his purpose and with his personality and what he wants to achieve, and it's perfect for him. But when I tried to do it, it just stressed the hell out of me. I was just like so bottled up with this, this rigidity of trying to do everything in that way that it took me. Then I realized that it just wasn't me. It didn't work for me. It didn't make me happy. It didn't actually even make me more productive. And so I had to sort of get curious about, well, okay, which bits of this will work for me, and which bits of it do I just need to let go and acknowledge that that's just not me.
Wow. Yeah. And I think for you young listeners out there, with so much pressure and expectation put upon us by the world and wanting to mold us into a person that maybe we're not supposed to be. And I'm thinking of the educational system, for one, where a
Yeah.
lot of kids aren't cut out for college, but there's so much pressure and expectation that you're supposed to grind through this thing, even though their passions might lie elsewhere. And boy, then there's parents that refuse to back off and kind of let the child bloom into the person they deserve to be. Not to harp on that example, but I think even for us
Oh, it's a
adults,
great
when
one.
we're stuck in these careers and we're so locked in that we don't even have time for reflection on whether this is still a path to cultivating the highest expression of my talents and purpose as a human. And all of a sudden, 7 years go by, or 14 or 21. So I think constantly keeping this stuff in the mix and not being afraid to be honest, and to reassess and reevaluate. And your example of kind of like forcing yourself to be a highly organized person, I know that stuff hasn't worked well for me. Whenever I tried to stray from my basic nature as a human, and I'd feel inferior or second guess my approach, and then I'd have to go looking for validation somewhere. I remember Katie Bowman, you might have heard of her, the biomechanist. She's written Move Your DNA and a lot of books about healthy, nutritious movement is her
Yeah.
her tagline. And I used to have this fidgety work day where I'd stand up for a while, then I'd go sit on the couch in lounging mode, then I'd sit on a chair, then I'd take a 10-minute break to go do some exercise, then I'd come back and I'd only work for 20 minutes and take another 10-minute break. And I felt so bad, like I was just being a goof off because I was able to work at home and no one was watching me. And she, has this position that what you really want to strive for in your workday is tremendous variation in your body positioning. And
Yeah.
so it's highly recommended to go stand up, sit down, stand up, move to another room, take a quick break for exercise. And I'm like, yes, my methods were effective all along. But
Yeah.
it's funny how we go away from our strengths because maybe even just one offhanded comment by somebody like, "What's all that paperwork over in the corner? Why it's such a mess?" And maybe that's
Yeah.
the strategy that works for you, and where everything is if you were asked to produce one paper.
Yeah, and in chiropractic philosophy, we talk about that as your innate intelligence. The
The
intelligence that
innate
exists
intelligence
within
of
your
the
body.
body. Yeah, I love it.
That your body actually knows what to do and it knows when to do it. And so often that is, they talk about our educated mind, and they say, our educated mind, which is the stuff we've been taught of how we should be doing things and all those expectations of what we should be doing and when we should be doing it and what time you should eat breakfast and what time you should have your break and all of those things that are so rigid and so structured is that kind of educated mind stuff. But yeah, sometimes if we actually just listen to our body, it tells us, hey, I need to move a little bit right now. I need to sit down for a bit right now. I need to go eat something right now, or I don't need to eat something right now. I think when we can listen to that innate intelligence of our body and just go with the flow a bit more, then I think that is the way our body is designed to work. And I think there is a lot of wisdom in that has evolved over a very, very long period of time. There are reasons often I think that we don't even understand why our body is telling us to do those things. And obviously in our modern world we need to be careful that that's not getting clouded by addictions to whether that's social media or food or whatever it is that is not necessarily natural and can be clouding that innate intelligence to a degree. But I still think there's a lot of value in listening to that innate intelligence and listening to your body as well.
Oh my gosh, our innate intelligence has been destroyed. by
Yeah.
all the things you mentioned and then some. And I'm a big golfer. I love the sport of speed golf, where you have to move
Yes,
so
I remember you
quickly that
telling me about that.
you kind of get out of that over analytical mindset and demand that your body's innate intelligence takes over, because I didn't have time to check the yardage. So I'm just standing over what turns out to be a 63-yard pitch shot, and there's no reference point. I know Dave Pells, he's a big golf teacher. He writes a book where the clock method of taking your club back to 9 o'clock and swinging it through to 3 o'clock is the way to hit a 20-yard chip. But when you're a speed golfer, it's all about innate athletic intelligence. And it's such a wonderful experience to go out there and realize that getting out of that analytical mindset and just going with the flow and looking at a target and swinging the club, amazing things happen. And a lot of golfers that play discover that they play as good or better than when they're taking all the time in the world and they have 14 clubs instead of 5, and the caddy's telling them about the wind direction and how the slope of this particular hole, the ball usually runs a little bit to the right, so plan for that. And then you go hit a crappy shot into the sand trap. And I think, taking that concept, oh, I love how chiropractic, that's such a central element of the chiropractic approach too. But then going back earlier in your story where, you were talking about the same thing as applied to, your direction in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I need to try speed golf because, for someone who is relatively sporty and coordinated, I'm terrible at hitting a golf ball. So I'm thinking maybe I just need to do it faster. Just get out of my head and just whack the thing, right?
Yeah, I mean, the practice swing is like the biggest thing in golf, but it's like, wait a second, if your swing's crappy to begin with, why are you taking a practice swing, man? Get up to that ball and hit the thing. Yeah, big thumbs up for speed golf. And it's pretty big in Australia. There's a whole circuit down there. Virginia Deegan runs the Speed Golf Association of Australia. So they would be
Yeah.
happy to hear from Dr. Brett to come join forces there. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd never heard of it until last time I interviewed you, I think, and you spoke about it. I'd never even heard of it. It sounded fascinating. So I still haven't tried it yet. It's definitely going to have to be on the list. So
Right on. So this ebook is available worldwide. Obviously, we can go look on Amazon or your website, I guess, Dr. Brett
yeah,
Hill,
it's
drbretthill.com. And
yeah, it's actually
yeah,
it's so new that it's not even on Amazon yet. So it's on my website, and in fact, probably by the time this interview goes live, it will be on Amazon, but it's actually not there yet. But it is available on the website. And also obviously the mentoring, if people want to do mentoring, I've set up a special link for you, if that's okay, if I can share that with people. So if they go to drbretthill.com/primal, what they can actually do is they can join me in my mentoring group for 30 days for free. So part of that is we do every month we do 2 mentoring sessions. Now those will be, time zones are not great for you guys. Right? So
too bad. It shows your commitment to the project if you
that's it.
get on the
That's
time
it.
zone. Come on, people.
So, but they are all available on recordings as well. And in fact, all of the mentoring sessions I've done over the last sort of 6 months up to this date are available in the membership site. So you can go and listen to those. There's also a private group where I interact with my members every single day. So you can go in there and share what your challenges are, what your wins are, ask any questions you want of me, and I'll answer them every single day. And we do a 21-day challenge every month. And so we do, whether that's food or exercise or mindset or gratitude or, stretching or, every month we pick something different just as a bit of a challenge, just to, flex that resilience muscle and to get ourselves in that habit of that growth mindset of understanding that we can sort of change and grow. So yeah, drbretthill.com/primal. Come join me for 30 days. There's no commitment to sort of stay beyond that. If you want to stay beyond that, that's great. But if you just want to, spend 30 days and get a bit more resilient, then that's totally okay too.
Love it. Dr. Brett Hill, thanks for joining us from all the way down under in Adelaide. Good luck to the footies in the championships coming up. And thank you for all those wonderful insights. Go get the book, Rock Bottom, people. Thank you for listening.
Thanks, mate.
Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum.